Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Coupeville School District Board of Directors regular meeting for Thursday, April 24th, 2025. Please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just as a reminder, this meeting will be recorded and available on the district's YouTube channel and website. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. At this time, we'll move to reading our district land acknowledgement and our district equity statement. And I'd like to invite Director Connor to read the Coupeville School District land acknowledgement statement.
Coupeville schools are located on the ancestral lands of the Lower Skagit people. For thousands of years, Coast Salish tribes have stewarded these lands, waterways, plants, and animals. We pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, and cultures of their people across the nation. Coupeville schools are committed to educating students, staff, and the community about this long history as we honor and acknowledge the continued presence of the Swinomish Indian tribal community and all other Indigenous people.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Director Merwine to read the Coupeville School District equity statement.
The Coupeville School District, equitable and inclusive working and learning community for all, whether about race,
I'm going to go in the room.
language, immigration status, culture, sexual orientation, gender identity, class, ability, or a combination of these. All students deserve to be respected for who they are and acknowledged for the strengths they bring to our learning community.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the consent agenda. Is there any item a board member wishes to remove from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. At this, we'll move on to public comment. If you didn't have a chance to sign up and would like to, the public comment sheet is on the podium before we pull it off. The total time for the public comment period is 21 minutes. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes. Public comment period is an opportunity for the board to list individuals on educational issues. However, the public comment period is not a time for dialogue between the board and the public. The board will not respond to statements, questions, or challenges made during public comment period, and there will be no back and forth dialogue. Please know that the board silence is neutral. It's neither a signal of agreement or disagreement with the speaker's remarks. Although the board will not engage in dialogue, the board chair may ask the speaker a clarifying question, or if it's possible, that a school staff can contact the speaker to follow up on an issue later. And finally, please remember your words have an impact and that you're legally responsible for your words. And we ask you to help us model for our students what a respectful and inclusive community looks and sounds like. Which brings me to our first sign up on public comment, which is Miss Laura Callahan.
Hi. Thank you for listening. What I'm going to say won't be easy for anyone, but it comes from a place of deep care and love for the kids of Coupeville. This has taken a lot of thought and reflection, but it is rooted in a love for the kids, our school, and our community. I'm here today not just as a parent, but as a Coupeville alumni, as someone who spent the last 2.5 years in our schools volunteering, mentoring, and getting to know our students and staff. When my daughters arrived at Coupeville Middle and High School, they were welcomed in. Public school was new to them, and there was hesitation, but the care they were given and the sense of belonging they experienced made our school feel special. It was safe. They weren't just a number, they had a name. They were important, valued, and my girls were known. Sadly, in the past 6 months, under new leadership, that spirit has faded. We have shifted from a culture of connection and individuality to one that seems to be driven by compliance, control, and fear. Our new culture feels more like a behavioral correction center than a place of belonging for our kids. It is sad to see youthful enthusiasm quenched to enhance an image, or when rules supersede relationships. Parents and students have shared they feel the new model of leadership seems to have a bent to intimidation and coercion. Our leadership should be modeling the behavior we want from our students. We should not be teaching our kids just to comply. We should be inspiring them, allowing them to ask questions, wrestling with the big things in life, giving them space to grow, providing a safe space to fail and still be protected and loved. That is what real education looks like. That is how true change is made. In addition, many staff no longer feel safe or supported. Talented educators we love are leaving our kids not because they don't love their work or their students, but because the climate has become toxic. This isn't just speculation. This is real, and it's impacting our kids in a very negative way. And what is worse, the silence. Decisions are being made behind closed doors, dismantling a student-first approach with no explanation. Families are in the dark, staff are afraid to speak up, the lack of transparency is unacceptable. We are told to trust the process, but what we see or what we're seeing does not inspire trust. Good families are leaving. I'm one of them. I'm planning to pull my youngest daughter from Coupeville at the end of this year without any significant changes to our school district, as this is no longer a safe place for her. We all want safety, inspiration, and growth for our kids, but that cannot be achieved through fear and control. It takes respect, transparency, and collaboration from the top down. Superintendent Leatherwood, this school was not broken. It did not need a culture change. It needed leadership that would listen and support its people. You inherited a dedicated staff who loved kids and our community who supported them. But the leadership model being used is driving our people away. If you can't see the damage that's being done, I urge you to reconsider if this is your place. Coupeville School Board, your silence is being noticed and is being taken as inaction. I urge you to ask hard questions and look deeper, talk and listen to our staff and to the parents. Good people are taking their kids elsewhere for a reason. Staff are walking away. Our students are losing people they trust. Find out why. I have letters from those who want their voices heard but are hesitant to speak out due to fear of retaliation to themselves or to their child. I will be sending those to the board. My understanding is that none of our board members have their children in Coupeville's middle and high school at this time. So I'd ask you to listen to those of us who do. Things are not good. We are not all okay. Students, parents, and staff are upset, scared of the path our school is on. We are losing trust. Thank you.
Next person on public comment is Miss Vanessa Matros.
Good evening, board. Thank you for your time tonight, your leadership, and during this such a challenging budget season. I know the decisions that you're making are not easy, and I appreciate the care and the intentionality that you bring to each one. I'm here tonight to speak in support of Coupeville Open Academy and urge you to fully consider the consequences of relocating it to the main campus. I also sent a letter out that you got ahead of this. I can't fit everything into 3 minutes. Nancy, yours bounced back, so if you didn't get it, if Shannon or Morgan, okay, perfect. DOA isn't just a program, it's a refuge. It serves students who haven't thrived in traditional schools, often due to trauma, mental health struggles, or unstable home lives. Some students have been expelled from other districts or even currently trespassed from campus and school grounds. For them, Open Academy isn't just a second chance, it's an only chance. The off-campus location is not a luxury. It's a foundation for the program's success. The physical and psychological distance from the traditional school environment allows students to re-engage without reliving past experiences of failures, bullying, exclusion, or school-related anxiety. We have students that are so anxious just to walk on campus that they would not come back if it is on campus. It provides a safe space where trust can be built and learning can happen. And its proximity to the Juvenile Detention Center isn't incidental. It enables a powerful and productive relationship between Coupeville School District and the JDC school program. The connection with JDC supports students re-entering school after involvement with the justice system. It's a model of what re-engagement can look like when we meet students where they are, both literally and figuratively. Nationally, open doors and ELA programs like COA have been shown to improve credit recovery, graduation rates, and long-term student success when they're built with intention and flexibility. Locally, COA helps to meet your own goals that the district has set around equity and inclusion in graduation rates. Financially, the program is self-sustaining. With current enrollment, I would estimate it probably generates around $540,000 a year and operates at approximately $150,000 out of that enrollment budget. Those are estimates. You're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong. Even if relocating saved approximately $50,000 in rent and utilities, which would be my estimate of where the savings would be, losing just 5 students, just 5 out of that program would erase those financial savings. And that doesn't count the long-term impact of pushing even 1 student out of education, and it's something we simply can't afford. Many COA students won't be here tonight to speak. They're not here to speak for themselves. Some don't have adults that will speak for them or on their behalf. But that's why your leadership matters so much in making this decision. So please don't dismantle what's working. Let's protect this space, this model, and this opportunity for our students that need it the most. Thank you for your time.
Moving on to reports and communication. And the first item on report and communication is our learning spotlight with Ms. Sherman and all of her amazing young authors.
Thank you for having us. It's been a long time since young authors have presented. This has been a pretty amazing. Why don't you guys turn around? We're gonna present to the board, okay? Perfect. This has been an amazing young group of students that we're working with. Young Authors has been. I talked to Susan Marchese, who ran it before I did, at least 30 years, because all 3 of our sons were in it, and we actually had a budding author on the board there. I found his young author's book titled The Basketball Star. And Mr. Sherman liked sports, and his favorite sport was basketball and football. His favorite basketball team was the Bulls, and his favorite football team were the Cowboys. He liked cats and dogs, and he liked Star Wars. So anyway, it's been around a long time. This is my 20th year, and I'm still loving it so much. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I have a quote on our classroom wall that says, "Books aren't just made of words. They're also filled with places to visit and people to meet." During our young authors journey, we traveled to many places, both real and imaginary. We were transported far into the future by being sucked into a watch, took an elevator ride to a mysterious animal island hidden in a hotel basement, and embarked on a fantastical adventure to change an identity, only to discover along the way that they were perfect just as they were. We sailed aboard a ship during the age of exploration on a humorous journey that led to the invention of the game Marco Polo. There was even a mysterious love story. We met magical wizards, powerful robots, and athletes who discovered confidence through hardship. Animals and even food were personified as the imaginations of these amazing young writers soared. And these are the 17 students who participated. We had 4th and 5th graders this year. So the main thing with young authors is just to foster a love of learning or a love of writing. Oftentimes when you talk to students about their least favorite subject, it's writing. And so it's been really fun to have students that want to come in and want so badly to write. We enhance literacy skills through the use of mentor texts, looking at the craft of other professional authors. We empower students to express themselves creatively, but within the limits of a plot structure, and which I think has been helpful. But they get to be extremely creative, and we've been able to build confidence and provide the students with tools. And they each have a young author's notebook, which I know some of the students have told me they even use later when they're in other grades, because it's filled with the tools that we need in literacy. So the kids all wrote down some things about young authors, and I just loved these quotes, so I picked a few. One was from Matthew. Matthew's here with us today. I finally found where I belong, and I also like that I wrote a book. Arlie is here with us today. There's Arlie. Can you raise your hand? There's Arlie. Sometimes it takes many drafts to write something, but in the end, it's worth it. And they were able to meet authors who were able to let them know that it takes a long time to write a book. And Audrey's not here tonight, but she said you can let your imagination soar. You can write a story about almost anything, whether it be robots taking over the world to unicorns having a party in the clouds. So the rest of the presentation will be the students presenting. And I'd like Alec, Christy to come up first.
Hello, my name is Alec Christie, and this is my first year in the Young Authors program. I'm going to talk about meeting Eldridge Black, author of the Weirdbee Island series. Eldridge Black came to a Young Authors meeting, talked to us about how to properly describe our characters, places, and objects. We got a little booklet where we had to describe a monster's smell, what it looked like, what it ate, what its name was, what it sounded like. Meeting Eldridge Black was overall a very cool and fun experience. Thank you.
And it was really fun for the kids when we went to the Young Authors Conference. Eldridge walked in. He was like, oh my gosh, you're here again. So they got 2 experiences with them, and it was kind of fun because he knew all of you. So it's kind of fun to know a famous author. Okay. Juniper is going to come and speak to the next 2 slides about our Young Writers Conference.
Hi, I'm Juniper, and this is my second year in Young Authors. In March, we were invited to attend a Young Writers Conference at the Educational Service District in Anacortes. We learned a lot of really amazing things. One activity we did was called pie. We did not eat pie, I assure you, though that would be nice. We got to draw a picture of a pie, then we got taught what it stood for. Pie stands for persuasive, informational, and entertainment. This taught us an easy way to remember these 3 kinds of writing. We also got some free time to write poems, stories, and really anything else involving writing. After we did this, we got to present what we worked on during that time. This really helped us, especially for me, to practice public speaking. Thank you.
Okay, now the next 6 students are going to come up, and they're going to show you their book and just do a real quick blurb. So, Faith?
Hi, I'm Faith. This is my 3rd year in Young Authors. What I love about the program is how we get to go to the conference and do a whole bunch of other fun things, and we get to meet authors. The book I wrote is titled The Extinction of Robots. My book blurb is about 2 sisters named Jade and Mila, and they travel the future and they find out that robots control everything, and they have to figure out how to stop them before they control the world.
Okay, next up is Raina.
Hi, I'm Raina. This was my 3rd year in Young Authors. What I love about the program is that you get to write about whatever you want to. The book I wrote was titled A Special Delivery. My book blurb is about 2 sisters that want to deliver a very special gift to their dad in California. The only thing stopping them from getting there was because they missed their flight.
but they were determined to get there on time.
Eulalie.
Hi, I'm Yuli. This was my second year in Young Authors. What I love about this program is I get to use my imagination and put it into a story. I also found a project that I really love, writing. The book I wrote is titled Animal Island Adventure. My book blurb is about a girl in a wheelchair named Susie. She clicks a button to the bottom floor of an elevator and ends up in a magical land. She becomes friends with animals. Then she gets stuck in the elevator and the animals save her. Susie and her parents then move to Animal Island. Finally, they live there forever and ever, but they do invite friends over for parties.
Hey, Eva.
Hi, I'm Eva. This was my third year in Young Authors. What I love about the program is that it prepares us for being actual authors. The book I wrote is titled The Two Hammers. My book blurb is that Autumn and Charlie Rellington go to a school that has an evil school principal. But when another world appears, they must team up with the Air in the Night and Skyward and the Alicorn to strike the two hammers and save the world.
Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matthew Richards. This was my first year in Young Authors. What I love about the program is that you can write a book on anything that you'd like. Everyone can get you for who you are instead of just a kid that writes things. The book I wrote is titled The Wizard's Wings. My book blurb is the main character is named Jewel Rosales. She was born with wings, abandoned by her parents when they wondered what would be best for this kid. Became the Moon Wizard and struggled to keep herself under control. She is the main idea of the war, nicknamed the War of Wings. The inspiration was my love for magic, and the other half of of this inspiration was because I loved that I love Greek mythology.
Arlie.
Hi, I'm Arlie. This was my first year in Young Authors. What I love about the program is we get to learn more about ELA. The book I wrote is titled Journey's Decision. My book blurb is Carlos, a dog, decides that he is not satisfied with just being a dog. So he decides to go on a journey to change what type of animal he is. But the potion is on the other side of the world. Although once he gets there, he realizes that everyone is unique in their own way. And for him, being a dog was enough.
You would have been so proud of how they represented us, Coupeville Elementary School, at the conference. I got feedback from the ESD. They were just amazing and had fun. And I'm going to miss, well, some of you will be back next year. So, but I'm going to miss, I'm going to miss those of you who move on. So does anybody have any questions?
No, yeah, your storylines are so creative. And I wish that I could read through all of them.
Read those.
So we're so proud of you guys. Thank you for sharing with us your work. Really cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Jumping on to the next item under reports and communication. And I just would like to invite our families, if you would like to leave, feel free. Thank you so much for coming. Yes.
Highlight of our night.
We don't have any administrator reports this evening, taking us to the next item under reports and communication, which is our business manager report. Turn that over to Mr. Gianello.
Well, this is the financial report for the month of April on this board meeting. So go ahead to the next slide. Again, keeping in mind as we go through the financials, our pillars, our values, and our district goal. I'm going to keep those in mind as we progress through. We are going to start with an update on enrollment. Now, these are our enrollment numbers through April of 2025. We're going to take a look at enrollment. And as you can see by this chart, it's pretty much following the same trend lines that we've had in the past. But overall, that blue line at the top with the red diamonds as markers, we are above any historical revenue enrollment amounts that we've had in the past. So really continue to see an increase in enrollment. But traditionally, there is sort of a trend where the February to June months, February to May, kind of decline a little bit, and we're seeing that same trend continue. Go ahead to the next slide. Since it is kind of the time of budgeting, we thought we'd go look at these a little bit more in detail. So here is your basic education on the left-hand side, enrollment numbers over the past several years. You can see all the way back to 2013-14, where it was around 892 for just basic ed, and where it just sort of follows this trend. You do have a dip kind of in 2020-21 timeframe, COVID, but those numbers really have rebounded strongly here, nicely. You're not experiencing any gradual decrease, so that's a good thing. Of course, this is broken out more from basic education numbers. I should point out too that 24-25, that's what we budgeted for. So we did, we talked about that a little bit. We were conservative in our enrollment last year during the 24-25 budget. The only thing with that is that we do wait till January to get an increase to actual from the state. But then you can see the other programs too that we've had here. ALE's new this year, so that's why sort of a pilot test, but we had some activity there for the first year. Open Doors, Running Start, and that'll get you to your total basic ed number. TTK program is new, so that's why you'll just see that for the 24-25 year. And of course, you can see those CTE numbers as well. Really, lastly on the list is special education, which I don't know we talked about much, but I think it's a good time to start looking at those numbers a little more closely, because what you'll see there is hovering around 150 for the most part for several years. Really why we budgeted last year for 150, but past 2 years there's a large spike, as you can see there, where I think even actually hovering around 200 special ed students. So that's something that we'll have to talk more about through the budget season here. So yeah, the difference between budget to actual numbers is given there. Overall, since we did budget conservatively in basic ed, we talked about this before, but you'll see the total BEA number. We were only off by about 2. All in, we talked about that some too. But thought this was good timing to pay closer attention to our enrollment. So we can go ahead to the next slide. This is somewhat of the same information, just in more of a bar graph format. So again, you can see that visual over time broken out into some different programs: basic ed, special ed, CTE, career technology, education classes, and then of course ALE. You notice there's not much activity because ALE was new. But again, you have the red, what we budgeted for, the blue bars is what our actual numbers are, and then all the green is previous year activity. So you can see again, we have strong enrollment numbers, which is a positive thing. So with that, we are going to move into the financial report where we're at based on March. So even though our enrollment data we have through April because of count, these are the financials to date as of March. We're a little over half of the way through. This is kind of our quick barometer check for on a separate couple different levels for revenues to date, expenditures to date, have cash flow, and the fund balance that we'll kind of talk about a little bit more. But all trend lines and indicators are our activity is showing consistent with past trends, I would say. So go ahead, next slide. This is the general fund update of our financials year to date, again through March. So you can see where total ending fund balance for the month is there at the bottom, just under $1 million. Next slide. These slides are just going to break down revenues and expenditures. I think we've talked about this before, but it's still can't highlight it enough. You can notice in public school districts how the revenues come in for each month. Again, we are following past trends pretty accurately. We had a slight different trend some earlier months there, but we talked about that largely in part due to the federal grants and the new software. We weren't able to claim them in December, and then all of a sudden we finally were able to claim basically September through December and January. So that's really why you see a large spike there. But now we're falling into those trend lines, I think, a little more accurately here as we continue to do monthly grant claims. You can see the monthly revenues come in. Big spikes in October and April. We're almost getting to April. Is due to local levies come in, tax collections. So that's when we're going to see the largest amount of revenue come in. You'll notice it then dips off May, June timeframe, because that's the way state apportionment comes in, is really in that July, August. We get the most of state apportionment in July and August. There's actually even legislation out there that's making me more and more nervous, is they're going to increase that, possibly if that passes, it looking like it is, where we would have even a larger dip in May and June and more apportionment coming in July and August. So that's interesting. But go ahead to the next slide. So that's revenues. Expenditures, you'll note, is a much different look. That's because we still have to pay payroll every month. Utility bills, those are consistent. So even though our revenues come in sporadically, our expenditure is a little bit more steady. Again, that's highlights the fact of why you need a fund balance, school districts. Slide. This breaks down the expenditures a little more in detail. Again, this is month to date through March. These are actual expenditures that we've spent in the different categories. Again, highlighting the fact that the majority, 86% school district budgets and finances expenditures are on salaries and benefits. We're in the people business, so we have our budget. Next slide. This is just looking at the same information in a different way, same numbers, just showing it bar graphed out where you see certificated salaries. You can compare it to some past years, but really, again, that's what you see in past years as well. The salaries and benefits make up the majority of the budget, and revenues and expenditures. School districts, what we usually refer to as MSOCs, are those supplies, services, travel, and you can see there's just a lower amount of the overall expenditures there. This was an important one for us to watch this year, but you can see where we did make reductions last year. This is the effect of those reductions. We are above that dotted line, which is where we were falling with our cash flow throughout the year. We were dipping below that, and we needed to borrow from capital projects fund. Everything here we're tracking and projecting and not looking like we're going to need to borrow from any of the funds at this time. We continue to follow that trend line as this year continues. That being said, there's board policy 6% of expenditures or fund balance is the minimum fund balance policy. You can see here, we're not at that 6% fund balance. So even though we don't have to borrow from other funds, we still don't have that minimum 6% fund balance in any month. March, you can see we're getting a little closer to it, which is interesting, but a lot more to go. And with legislation changing as well, this is definitely something we want to talk about as time progresses.
And I think we've had the question, is
Yeah.
it 6% at the start and end, or is it 6% all through the year? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
so I guess that's
I think the
maybe worth clear. You think the policy is throughout the year?
It's budget. I will stay out of that one because that is a topic for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I know as it's written, what we do is it's 6% of budgeted expenditures.
Right. So
So that's an interesting. I know other
Yeah.
districts sometimes will say, or is it 6% of actual expenditures, or like you're saying, is it where we end up at the end of the year, 6%? Should it be we need to be 6% or more monthly?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen different districts have different interpretations of that. But I think a lot of districts in this financial times are relooking at exactly that. Not just on, gosh, should it be a higher percentage, but exactly what you just brought up. There's different ways to mark that or measure that, different ways to do that.
The charts that you
Mhm.
charts that you make are really good measures for that. I mean, you need to have enough so that you don't have to borrow money to get through a month. And so that may take 6% some months, it might take 8%. And you can follow that on the charts that you provided.
Correct.
It's a conversation to keep having at the policy and level, but what I'd love to see in the long run would be to restrict 6% of budgeted expenditures and not touch it. So that would mean throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we're not at either, so
It's all
Okay.
hypothetical at the
we're
moment.
going in the right direction.
Correct.
But yeah, thanks.
Correct. No, it's great discussion. Continue to have that. This slide is a great slide because what does all that mean? Kind of putting it in different terms, even though this is based on a month. So we were looking at it month to month, how we mentioned before, hey, we're at 5% for the month of fund balance. What that really means is we have enough revenues. We had to close down today to operate for 14 days.
Mhm.
We paid the bills for 14 days and then be out of money. So that's really what that 5% equates to and puts it in perspective. We need to continue to have those discussions. That's the fund balance. That's the general fund. We do want to leave out these other smaller funds, or not smaller in size, but just we refer to them as smaller funds. Less activity, I guess, but capital projects here is a big one. We continue to finish up projects and complete projects. So anticipating to see more of those invoices coming in now. There's usually just a delay, even if the projects are done. It takes a while for the contractors and everybody to get their bills in. We'll start seeing that. The debt service fund, in June, we will make the final payment of our non-voted debt and essentially be debt-free, if you will, in the debt service fund. That's a good thing. ASB, we continue to have activity, and in transportation vehicle fund, although we have an ending balance over 200,000, we have purchased a bus. We haven't paid for it yet, but I hear we're doing the licensing now, and it should be arriving pretty soon. I remember Rob saying end of May. So we'll have a new big yellow to add to the fleet here soon, and we'll pay. So that was it for that. I did want to add, excuse me, one other thing in is just the audit is underway. You guys, the board should have gotten emails. Everyone should have gotten emails sending out the entrance information about the audit. Yeah.
They also messed up Brian's email, so yeah.
Yes, we discovered that.
I'll get it forwarded to.
Okay, good. But I can give you a quick update. Although you got the entrance documents, my understanding, they've been working with me since spring break, roughly. They kind of come in and do a preliminary meeting where I have to provide them a lot of the just basic information that they're used to. And then they take that information and determine exactly what they want to audit, if you will, what they want to sample. So it's moving along pretty well. What you guys got in the email is, in summary, we're actually under a 2-year cycle accountability audit. So that's something that we have going this year. We have a annual yearly financial statement audit, which is pretty standard. But then we have that third audit for single compliance. And that is when we spend over $750,000 or more in federal dollars, which we did. So now we have that single audit that has to take place. They've chosen the child nutrition cluster. So essentially your food service grants, the federal funding that we get there. And they've chose ESSER. Yes, we had the last, it was a smaller amount, $80,000, I think, but they had chose the last of the ESSER fund dollars to audit there. For the 2-year accountability audit, they're looking at account payable, apportionment, open public meetings, so sort of board meeting agendas and minutes. And then they're looking at our financial condition, reviewing for indications of financial distress. So that's a 2 or 3 year cycle. Right now we're on a 2-year cycle with that. So that's kind of an added, I think that's the most you can have going on in any 1 year is those 3 different audits. But we're moving along pretty well right now. We'll see more of that for updates in the future. Are there any questions on that? Yes, we do. They in those no good. You must be reading the email. In the email, that's the thing. The scope of work. They work with me since spring break, provide preliminary information. So once they decide what they're going to audit, they're able to provide a cost estimate for that as well. I should have mentioned this though. The one we're doing hybrid this year, so that is why hopefully we'll actually be some cost savings there. They're not traveling out here for the full audit. That puts a little bit more on us to scan things over to them, but it's going pretty well. We're able to keep up as best we can, but that will keep costs down because it's hybrid.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. All right, moving on to our next reports and communication is our superintendent report.
All right, go ahead, Will. Back to the strategic plan, yeah. All right, so there we go. So as you know, our strategic plan, our vision is to prepare every student for their future. My report this month is really talking about some ways that we're preparing students for their future and the people who contribute to that future for our students. And so this, in the last few weeks, OSPI came out with a release yesterday recognizing us one of 5 districts in the state of Washington to receive the Purple Star Award. This is a prestigious award through the state. We will be receiving this both at our state conference and also at the awards ceremony through WASA. It's really designed around recognizing that we go above and beyond to partner with our naval base and also with our families and our students to ensure that transition and ensure that they are receiving care and really coordinating with the people there at Woodby Island. So we're very grateful for that, and it was a nice to see that we were honored. Oak Harbor was one of the first ones. Last year was the year that it began, and so we're one of the 5 districts that followed last year. Also, we celebrated our bus driver appreciation, and we did a shout out. There were many treats that were delivered to them this week. But as you know, they're the first to greet our students and they're last to say goodbye to our students each day. And a lot of times that sets the tone for their learning. It sets the tone for their day. And so we really appreciate, we have fabulous bus drivers and they're doing an exceptional job to ensure that our students come safely, both emotionally and safe, and also return home that way. And then finally, we have a group going to Skills USA and Nationals. Go ahead and go through this. The next slide that I put on here is I'm going to talk about the Skills USA, but this one in particular just kind of goes over what the Purple Star Award is around. And so really, if you can go onto our social media and see what we posted about the Purple Star, it also has Chris Reichdahl's announcement for that yesterday, and then who the 5 recipients were. But really, it's around Coupeville School District continues to develop comprehensive support systems to address academic, social, and emotional needs of our military-connected students facing transit. And that's really the goal for all of those schools, ensuring that they're partnering. And on the next one, this is just pictures of our bus drivers. We have some fabulous bus drivers, and we have brought on a few this year. I know that many of you know that we had Kathy Bennett retire. She's still on as a substitute, and so she's highlighted there. We've also brought on some substitutes this year and some permanent drivers this year. And so we're very proud that we're one of very few districts that are actually not in the area of going, we don't have enough bus drivers, but we're always looking for more substitutes as well. So we're very proud of the crew we have. They're very dedicated. So our Skills USA, they're going to Atlanta, Georgia on June 23rd through the 27th. And we have a senior, Pamela Morel, who's going, freshman Alexandra Lowe, freshman Max May. Thank you. 8th grader Betty Woolworth, and then another 8th grader Natalie Driscoll. And we're very proud because this is the first year that we've participated. And when we looked at the state competition and how Coupeville represented, for such a small district, we noticed that, you know, some of the large districts in the state, we had just as many students represented that state as they did. So it was a very great first year turnout, and we're very excited for them to participate in that. All right. Any questions? I did want to mention one other thing. Saturday, we have a lot going on in Coupeville, and so we have a double header. Our fast pitch team is doing very, very well, and they have a double header. Our baseball team is also playing on Saturday. We have our farm to school potluck on that day at the same time, and then we also have our garden club plant sale. So it's going to be very full down in here, and parking's going to be a premium. So if people are going to all of that, you know, just be cautious of the amount of things happening. So we're excited. Great activities.
All right, jump into board member reports, and we'll start down at the end, move our way through. Okay.
I have much report on the legislative change from last workshop week, other than it's close to the end and haven't heard that they're not yet. Still hoping to go bump. Budget's actually supposed to be Saturday.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Let's see. For the budget committee, we've resumed our accounts payable and payroll reviews just to be able to put a little extra set of eyes on what's already a great process for familiarity and just for a check. The policy committee hasn't had a meeting since the last board meeting. That's partly my fault for being out of town for a while. And the IMC committee started meeting again. And so since I was the board member observing that committee before, I was invited to join that. And I'm really excited to see how we're planning to restructure it a little bit so that more of the heavy lifting work can be going on in subject level committees. That was already the case, but because of the way that we had structured our meetings, it was harder to do more evaluations simultaneously. This way, when curriculum recommendations come to the full committee, it will just be a smooth sailing to be able to get that before the board. And I'm really looking forward to that because curriculum adoption was pretty much suspended well before COVID. and a few attempts to get back on a schedule that will allow us to replace expired curriculum or outdated curriculum. We're really starting to be in a tough place with new learning standards coming on. So there's really a lot of work to be done, and we're going to be well poised to get started in the fall, I hope. Yeah, my final update is that I did just come back from the World Championship of Robotics in Houston, Texas, where we took 30 some odd students from the greater Whidbey area, including 2 Coupeville sophomores, Ryan Leakey and Gabe Smith. Did an amazing job, and we all learned so much. So we're very proud of them.
Thank you for doing that.
Mhm.
Budget's everything. I have to compliment Brian and on the work that's been done to capture history and current trends. It's not something we had when I first came on the board, and it's been really helpful in analyzing where we are and prepping ourselves to get ready to develop a final budget for this year. Most everyone's heard everything. I've just been reading it more after our meetings and also looking at other school districts. But that's the biggest focus for me right now. I do have some things I want to say that are complementary, but I think I'll save them for later when we get to the motion on the modified education plan. But more relevant there.
Just kind of a recap of our workshop. So the day before the workshop, Superintendent Leatherwood and I had a great meeting with Winnaha Group regarding pre-bond planning for the elementary school. We shared a proposed timeline that they presented to the board regarding a possible bond campaign that would run February of 2027. And they are planning to be back to the next workshop. So if any of our community is interested in learning more about that pre-bond planning process, it would be a great opportunity to attend the workshop next month. And I will share that calendar with you, but just excited for just the company that they are, for their values, for their strengths in working with small districts, and just excited for how we could partner with them in these next steps towards a potential elementary school. So it's exciting. We have encountered a lot of changes in our district, and I've had a lot of great community meetings this month. I just want to express my gratitude to our community and our staff for caring so much about our students and our schools. We do appreciate the communication and welcome the conversation. So we had an awesome walkthrough at the elementary school. That was very cool. Thank you to Principal McCall and Mr. Gabeline for letting us tour his classroom. I was so impressed with the work that's going on there. We learned amazing things about teacher training during early release Wednesdays, about peer observations, collaborative work with the building discipline team, steps to improve attendance, planning and scheduling plans for next year, and so much more. And it was just, it was great. And next month we'll be doing a walkthrough of high school. So we're looking forward to that. And just thank you for that time. It was great. Next month is staff appreciation, and we're excited about that. We always like to do something. So just know that communication around that will be coming. We want to express our gratitude to our staff who work so hard at the important work that they do. And so just know that communication will be coming around our plan for that. Okay. Jumping on to the next item on the agenda, which is correspondence. So we did, when we adopted our new board protocols a couple months ago, we have changed the way that we do correspondence. So instead of posting each individual letter, posting correspondence, I should say, is not a requirement. It's just something that's been a practice. We would rather provide a summary of those correspondence letters. So I will say that the board received one letter emphasizing the importance of creating inclusive and equitable learning environments for all students in Island County. And we did receive a letter concerning the potential relocation of Coupeville Open Academy. And jumping on to old business, we have two policies on here, which are reverting back to a 2020 policy and a 2022 policy. These were discussed at 2 workshops ago and at the last meeting, and these are changes from WASDA recommended policy changes. So, any other motion?
I would move to approve both policy 3205 and 5011 for second reading and adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 3205 and policy 5011 for second reading and adoption. Is there any debate? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And then jumping into new business this evening is adoption of resolution 2025-05, which is the modified education plan. And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Leatherwood.
Great, thank you. Right, just a reminder, as we're looking at this doesn't just go under our pillars around fiscal responsibility, but it also, as a budget committee who began meeting in January, we really discussed how what we do foundationally with our fiscally responsible management and connecting with families in the community and hearing from them and the budget committee really helps to empower our students, promote that student and staff well-being, and ensure excellent instruction. So that was a key component in what we did. As a committee, we began working in January, and the budget committee began by meeting every week. We went to every other week as we started to understand how we're funded from the state, what the prototypical model actually funds, and what we get for apportionment, and what we've done over the years, particularly in Coupeville, around expenditures dipping below our 6%. When were we above the 6%? And then also through this, really building that understanding of what's the difference between federal dollars, local dollars, and what the state gives us. From there, in February, we are also really digging into revenues, expenditures, and how enrollment drives really what we get. And so looking at enrollment numbers is where we get the majority of our apportionment numbers. In March, the committee started to look at recommendations, looking at things that they thought might be reallocations if we needed to reallocate, what we would look at as potential reductions if we need to get to the reduction level, or what are some of our priorities? What do we want to ensure we have for our kids in Coupeville? So those were the 3 things that they made recommendations from. But because we're in a long session with the state, and as we know, we do not start our funding will be until hopefully, like Director Merwine said, this Saturday. We're hoping to find out the state apportionment that we'll get. We're also in a time where we're not sure with our federal what our federal dollars are going to look like. We're hoping to be stable, and that looks like what we're going to have, but we don't know. And so there's 2 factors there, and then also letting our budget committee know that we also have 3 open contracts this year to negotiate. And so those 3 factors on our budget and the unknowns really puts us in a position to be looking at a modified education plan, even though Mr. Gianello talked about how we're in an upward trend overall with it. So the budget cuts that we've done in the past have made a difference, and we're starting to see that upwards trend. However, some of the things coming out from the state as far as additional costs for next year, all of that plays a factor. And Brian will be sharing that with the board also tonight. So our goal is to look at a modified education plan by state law. We're required by May 15th to provide names and reductions in force. It puts us at a timeline that we may not totally know yet what our apportionment is by then. And so I feel it's unfortunate we have that because sometimes we find out later. Additionally, in our CEA contract, we have by May 1st, we will provide them with a list. And so tonight we're going to be doing that portion of it, but there's a lot of factors that we'll be looking at if we need to, and if it comes down to we're not getting the portion we expect. And so our hope is then by June, we're going to bring back the budget committee to be able to look at our draft budget. Because we're a Class A district, we do have to have our budget approved by July, the July board meeting. So it is 1 month prior to the larger districts. And so we intend to bring the budget committee back in June. This is a group of 30 individuals who signed up, community members, directors, staff members. We had 2 students on our committee, and like I said, they were very committed and really dug into the work. And I appreciate the work that they did to come up with ideas, come up with things that we could look at, but also know that, you know, we're doing it with understanding how a district's funded, which is very different than like a house budget or a budget in a company. It's different. These are some of the pieces that the team started with, your key learning. We had an FAQ. All of this is on our website. So every question that was asked, every slide that was shown, all of that is on our website, available to everybody. But we had them, you know, write down what were some surprises from what they were learning. What are some of the things that they still wanted to see clarified? They would put that in FAQ, or what was clarified for them. And then finally, what was a new understanding? And then ultimately looking by each table, what were their hopes and dreams for the Coupeville School District? And so each table came up with these. We did a gallery walk to kind of look at, you know, what was it that we still needed to educate and make sure that everybody understood around that. These are just a couple more and how those tables configured. And just a list of those on the wall as we did our gallery. So from there, I'm going to have Brian go through some of the preliminary projections for next year and what we're looking at for a budgeted revenue. And when we do that, we go off of right now because we do not know where the state legislature is going to be. We go off of the governor's budget.
Right. Apologize. I was going to mention that during my fiscal update that we felt it to do the budget update essentially over here intertwined in this modified education thing. So yeah, this is where we're at now, essentially a budget update. We're going to start walking through revenues. So the next slide. How do we get our revenues? Like Shannon mentioned, we in budget committee explored this. It starts with enrollment, projecting enrollment and trying to figure out how many students will be here next year. We adopted and talked about a cohort survival ratio method, something that we haven't done here at Coupeville School District in the past. It's based on some metrics on trends, past data that we looked at earlier. And since trends are trending up, we have the cohort survival ratio method shows us this is one of the higher enrollments that we've budgeted for in a while here. And I know there's been some discussion about that, and we're not locked into this. Remember, this is still preliminary, so we can continue to have those discussions. And as the state legislature finalizes, they actually put out an actual F203 tool, so we can plug different scenarios in even at that time too, and get actual revenues out. So we can continue to discuss that. But for now, we've had to pick something to move forward with, and this is what we chose. So if you go to the next slide. That was the K-12 enrollment numbers. And of course, as come up before, there are other factors we talked about on Running Start, alternative learning education program, ALE, open doors, CTE, and special education. And we took all that into consideration and looked at past trends there as well. Applied that to the cohort survival ratio method and moved forward with these numbers on the screen. The next slide. What that does is it allows us to come up with preliminary revenue estimates for next year, which is around 19 million. That is what we came up with. I think this is animated, so if you click one, there you go. Like we discussed, the biggest part of the budget is the state revenue portion, and how are we able to do that and come up with those largest numbers is based on that enrollment. We thankful for some experienced business manager, Dan Pullman, who's worked with us to create an amazing tool that we've shared with you at some workshops before that allows us to project this number, I think, more accurately than ever has been done in the past, or at least we have some methodology that we plugged in. Like Shannon mentioned, it's what we know as of now on the governor's or House budget. There are assumptions that we're using. It's not the final F203 that comes out. So again, these are preliminary numbers, but that is all there. Next slide. So this is a sneak preview, actually, like we're talking about the governor's budget. It breaks it down this section, the state apportionment, which is the largest revenue portion. And you can see there on this slide too, ALE numbers are in there, CTE numbers. This is open doors numbers. Do get thrown into this tool that's used to project out revenues based on the current governor's or House budget will receive in different categories. This is just breaking it out a little further. It's not just those FTE state programs revenues that we receive. There's other state revenues that we get grants wise. LAP is one of them. Transitional bilingual. Oh, now I forget. Intervention program, I believe, is TBIP. Highly capable. All those other programs funding that comes in. So this is considering all the other state funding as well. It comes up to about 14 million. So that's shown here. So that's how we get to that $19 million, largely made up of state apportionment, FTEs, and then other state special purpose grants. Something that we wanted to highlight, if you click one more, is this federal program. You'll notice that we do have in the preliminary projected revenue budget federal dollars, projected preliminary amount. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. I just wanted to point that out at this time. So that was revenue side of things in our preliminary budget. We're going to now move to the expenditure side. Again, how we're able to do this, we actually developed another tool working with with that same business manager or retired business manager. Thankful for his mentorship and sharing these tools with us because it's something we can use from year to year now too. We took our actual staffing and MSOCs out of cumulative. We're able to put it into this tool, step people up, and then also project forward what our staffing expenditures would be, again, with some presumptions on what we know from the House governor's budget. What we know about HCA SEB increases for next year. And other different benefits are all in here. MSOCs are all in here as well. So we come up with a total expenditure amount of about 19.5 million. Go ahead to the next slide. This is just highlighting, maybe I got ahead of myself a little bit. These are some of the assumptions that are in this tool that we use to project out that expenditure amount. PERS, SIRS, and PERS are the different retirement rates. We don't really have any PERS employees, so it's TERS and SIRS. But again, a lot of this is based on governor's budget. So if this information changes, it'll change our expenditure projection. So that is what we know at this time. So cycling back a little bit, we're going to talk about revenues that we've mentioned before. This slide just gives a visual. This actually is looking at our 23-2024 actual revenues and percenting it out, like how much percent federal, or local, or state revenues do we receive? And you'll see 77%, whether it's through state apportionment, or state grants, state revenues is the largest amount that we do receive year to year. But if you click the slide, one of the things and topics in the news right now is federal funding. So with uncertainties on federal funding, even though most of the time in budgeting, we say 6%, 6% federal funding. It's not the majority of revenue we receive, but it's something we wanted to draw out here and talk about a little more in the next slide. And put this in terms of money. So last year, what 6% meant to Coupeville School District was $1.2 million in revenues. Even though 6%, it's still around the 1 million mark. And if you click a little further, we wanted to draw out, like we talked about, what's being audited right now is that roughly $88,000 in the last of the ESSER funds. So we didn't want to include this in our scenario 2 that needs to be talked about because there is some uncertainty around federal funding. But we're still looking at about $1.1 million that we receive on an annual basis from federal sources. What this allows us to do is we lined up our revenues, preliminary revenues that we just talked about, and our preliminary expenditures, and we now have a shortfall, right? We can say we're about $440,000 that we need to balance the budget. That's a scenario 1. Let's go ahead and click the next slide. To elaborate on that a little bit further, because as Shannon was mentioning, there's some uncertainties out there with federal dollars circulating. So with federal uncertainties, we had to take a serious look at what it would mean if we lost. Currently, as I mentioned before, we did use a preliminary amount of $722,000 that we did budget for. We said, what if we don't get that? Well, then we're looking at a combined about $1.1 million shortfall. And it's a bit more of a significant amount of money. Instead of looking at the preliminary budget amount, if we take a look at that $1.176 million actual number, that's what we actually receive. We're looking at a much higher shortfall. So those scenarios really are where we're at. Again, there's a lot of unknowns at this time, but that's why I believe the recommendation for a modified education plan is necessary. Because there are some unknowns out there, and this is what is also a reality. So, and not be able to go back in time due to these contractual obligations and whatnot, we need to make a decision to move forward. Slide.
All right. So one of the things that I wanted to mention was what Director Merwine mentioned earlier, which is the potential that we may receive more special education funding and an increase in MSOC funding. And we're hoping that that stays true. But until Saturday happens or when they end session, we really won't know. And so this was based off of the governor's budget. We're very hopeful that we'll get potentially a lift on the cap. Currently, we're capped for special education students at 16%. We're well over 20% in this district of special education students. And so if they lift that cap, that will be additional apportionment that we'll receive. So we're hopeful, but that isn't final yet. And so until that's, final and we know what that's going to be, we're going off of the budget, the governor's budget. The other piece is the potential for a slight increase to MSOC funding, which is part of the big 3. So that also, we may see additional apportionment from that. The third of the big three was the transportation bill that we're hoping, and we don't feel that that's actually going to see much, if anything, from that bill. And so looking into our future, we're looking at some key dates. Obviously Saturday is going to be a big date for us when they end session. If they end session, I hear if they do a special or extended session, they're still hopeful to end by the end of next week. That is important to us because there's a current bill out there that if they do not end fairly soon, it will go dead in the water and we would lose quite a bit of apportionment that we're looking for. So we're hopeful that they'll end session within the next week, even if they have to extend a little bit. So looking into our future and what does this mean for Coupeville is right now where we're at to be able to have a modified education plan to be fiscally responsible. We're looking at that. And so again, just going through what we have done to get here this far and go ahead. What we still are going to be doing. And so on here, we talk about the potential for the reduction in force notifications to certified staff by May 1. That's where we'll provide a list. We're hoping to know more by now. And so that list, we're hoping will be a little more accurate, but definitely by that May 15th deadline, we're hoping it's even more accurate. And then in June, looking at a draft budget based on actuals so that we can actually adopt our budget in July because we need to, will be really important for our district. So what is a modified education plan? So a modified education plan really is around, it's a strategic framework to address financial challenges while still preserving educational quality. A structured approach is necessary, and we want to ensure that we keep to our strategic plan and we keep necessary like our staffing and our resource adjustment. So being able to put that in there. And then also a fiscally responsible plan is one to ensure that we maintain essential programs and services. So you're going to notice from last year to this year, we're not as focused on programs as we are looking at different areas and certifications. And so this one's going to be a little bit different than last year, and you'll see those adjustments. And then also looking at a path towards sustainable financial stability. Part of what we talked to the budget committee about was not just about getting by and reacting to today, but how can we sustain a budget so that we're looking at the future over many years? And what does that look like 3 years down from now? Because if we're looking at just today, we might be cutting programs that we'll want to bring back. And so we instead want to look over time and ensure that we're listening to the community, we're listening to our students and to our families and to our staff to ensure that programming for students is getting right to our strategic plan, which is ensuring that everybody's graduating and they have a future that they can see themselves in. And so why do we need a modified education plan? Because we have the responsibility in our board policy to not only be fiscally responsible, but we need that fund balance of 6%. And right as of yet, we are not there. We do see us having that upwards trajectory, yet we have so many unknowns right now that we cannot predict that will continue up without knowing what the state and the federal government's going to do. Also, we need it to have that financial oversight. So the Coupeville School District remains on the financial watch list through the Northwest ESD. And our hope is through a fund balance that's more responsible, we're going to get that. I did want to add in here that I did not add in last week. It also helps for our bond. When we go out for a bond, our bond rating goes off of what we have as a policy, and are we meeting that policy as a district, whatever we set that policy at. So right now, if we were to go out for a bond, our bond rating would not be as high as we would like it to be. And then we have a shortfall. Our scenario one is a shortfall of $445,000. That would be the best case scenario based on the governor's budget right now. And then the worst case scenario, the almost, yeah,
1.1,
1.1, 1.5, depending on what we looked at. I'm going to say, this is just my feeling, we're not going to be at the 1.5 million. I don't think we're going to lose all dollars federally, but we're really watching that closely because we've already seen the Department of Agriculture shut down some of the grants that we used to get that we will no longer get. We know that. But as far as Title I and some of the special education, we do anticipate we'll still get some of those. It's just what is, and that's the concern right now. As far as, and when will we know? We could know. So if we would have shut down today was a big date. We did not see a shutdown as far as Washington State getting shut out of the federal portal. But if, let's say we did, whenever they determine to sue and go through the court process is when they could potentially open, or they could say, next week we'll open it back up. So the unknown is it could take years, it could take months, it could take days. That's the unknown part that makes a lot of districts right now uncertain of the federal dollar. Superintendent Reichdahl from the state of Washington put out a map, and that map showed in the state of Washington districts receiving federal funds and what it would do to some of the districts in the state of Washington. I will say green districts were determined that, you know, it would impact them, but they still will be okay. We were considered green, and I would say we would not be okay with $1.176 million being taken away. But what I think his intent by that, and he didn't come out and say this, but I think his intent was their prediction of how many dollars will actually be taken from us should still keep us in the. And so the intent versus the impact, I think, is what they were trying to put out, even though they didn't specifically say that. Along our coastal part of our state were a lot of the orange ones on this side of the state, but then on the east side of the state, there was quite a few that it would be concerning no matter what. I believe that's what they were saying, but I would say even 100,000 for us is going to, you know, be concerning when we're looking at a minimum of 450,000. So this plan also will continue looking at restoring our fund balance, and then also it'll continue to look at that proactive and preventative measure to make sure that we're continuing to go in the right direction for your district. So our current status in the top line there shows this year and where we're at. So you can see from the top line of where we're at this year versus last year where we dipped below and could not meet payroll and had to borrow. We're doing financially a lot better this year. And if we knew everything, we probably would be not doing a modified education plan. Dependent, right? There's the factors of what's happening in the state and federal, but we also have 3 contracts open, and we don't know the result of those as well. But what we did last year to make cuts did make a difference in our fund balance this year, and so we can see that, and we do feel that we're going to continue to see at least more than we did last year. Where you see in June we dip below as well. That's going to be a watch month, but we do anticipate we will not have to. That being said, the state also has a bill out there that will change how we get apportionment potentially, and it's going to shift that apportionment, and those districts that do not have a large fund balance may be having to either borrow or they will be dipping below. And that's something that we're going to have to really watch in August and September because of the shift in apportionment. We're not going to get the apportionment we used to get if these bills go through. And so that's going to be now a tough month to ensure that we have proper fund balance to meet payroll. So Washington state law, I've already talked about these. There's the three different areas that we need to look at. July, for smaller districts, we must have our budget approved. And so with being a smaller district, we have to have that. We have to have everything determined a month before the larger districts have to. And sometimes that's difficult when we don't exactly know what's happening at the state and federal level. The May 15th deadline is also a requirement, and that's for determining a reduction in force. And then May 1st in our contract, our agreement is that we will make sure that we give out a list that shows those reductions. So our implementation phase for Coupeville District is in May and June, really looking at what we're going to do to see where we're at the state and federal level, make determinations before that May 1, which is coming up quickly. And then at May 15th, determining whether we actually need to follow through with that list, especially with certificated staff. So we're just talking certificated. We have more time with classified staff. We also have more time with other determinations on cuts because, you know, we don't have that legal requirement. And then based on that in July and August, making sure that we prepare for those adjusted staffing models, looking at class sizes, kids in seat, ensuring that they're getting the education we want them to get based on that, and then implementation of that modified education plan. So the how of this, what we have in the modified education plan for today to approve is up to 8 FTE. Again, we'll know a little bit more before the May 1 deadline. Hopefully we'll know a lot more by the May 15th deadline when we actually will put out reduction in force notices. We also have some administrator restructuring on top of that. We have our athletic director and middle school principal roles and combining. That's actually a cost savings, taking the current athletic director 0.4 of that contract is the athletic director wages, substitute costs, and a stipend. Actually is a cost savings of about $40,000 to hire a principal in the role of that. For CTE and high school principal roles combined, the CTE stipend is not quite as much, but it is a cost savings of about $15,000 in additional money. The elimination of an assistant food service director position and reallocating that to a supervisor that we took is about a $15,000 cost reduction because it is moving that assistant director into a supervisor role, and then restructuring into I already said that, restructuring into that position. Some of the classroom considerations is the possible move of COA on site. We will be continuing to look into that, but as we looked into that, that wasn't as big of a cost savings as we initially thought it was. We also have some considerations around the students who we serve there and how we serve those students. The other potential of that move to on-site is really around its location across the street from the JDC. And finally, our lease itself is up in December, and so we have a little time to look into that. And I think the current owner is willing to negotiate with us and potentially look at adjusting the lease and things like that. So there's a lot of talks still that need to happen for that, but that it wasn't as substantial as we initially thought it would be for the costs that are there. Also, we're looking at attrition reductions where possible, any resignations, and retirements, and so we'll continue to look at that and make considerations for the potential reductions. And then just with this modified education plan. If we are in this situation where we have to start September and there is a reduction, we're going to see potential class size increases in select grades. We have currently, part of our apportionment is by maintaining lower class size in our K3, and that will still be something that we need to maintain to get apportionment. But in classes 4 and above, we may see increases, which impacts student learning. And I feel strongly that if we can not have that happen, that would be the best case scenario. And then finally, just making sure, because we're very close on that K3 compliance, that as we're making these reductions, that we're also ensuring that we're using the tools that we have to keep in compliance with that. So as we move forward, our key priorities continue throughout this implementation process to keep student achievement at the top. We want to maintain that focus on our educational outcomes. We want to ensure that we can continue to sustain operations and create fiscally viable structures. So what does that mean? If we determine that we're moving staff around, that we're doing it in a way that's going to support staff and students and their learning. And then making sure that along the way we're providing that clear communication and that transition assistance to staff. And as we look at certificates and what they're qualified to teach in, and asking for possible movement around that. And then we're going to be regularly updating as we know more from the state and as we know more from the federal government, making sure that we're continuing to put out what we do know. And right now, Superintendent Reichdahl for the state of Washington, he's been putting out weekly updates, but the weekly updates still continue to say, I don't know much more. So there hasn't been a lot to provide at this point. So I'm hoping we'll hear more and we'll continue to monitor that. And then finally, the compliance, just adhering to all the state and contractual requirements. We want to ensure that we're out in front and that we're able to really plan for the future. Any questions?
No, I think we've talked about this a lot, at workshop, at different meetings. I mean, we've seen the numbers and the reports. I think it's wise to have worst case scenarios because we don't know some of the things. And so I appreciate that some of them are on there, even though they're not the things that we want. And that's the balance in this whole thing. How do we do the best we can with what we have and continue to serve? And so I just appreciate the explanations and the work that went into it, that this is a difficult decision because of the timeline that we have. And I know that you've been forthcoming around all of our decisions, and I know that you'll do the same as we can learn more around our financial situation. Thank you for both of you for the work. A lot, yeah. Any other questions? No? All right, we'll move on to the adoption of the resolution. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt resolution 2025-05, modified education plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2025-05, modified education plan. Is there any debate?
Kind of the continuation of time board budget report. Most of you know me here, but if you don't know, I worked at the school district for 30 years. Most of those years I was business manager. And so I've done this kind of work for a long time. I just really want to compliment, like I said earlier, the collection of historical information and charting and examining everything that's happened here for quite a number of years has been very critical and instrumental to getting us to a place where we can make good decisions that don't just take care of this year, but as you said earlier, help us to get in the direction so that we're able to have a more stable financial situation. I think that the reporting and things that have been done have been significant. The activation of the community budget committee, I can't say enough to the superintendent about that. 30 some people in here. They were asking questions that were important, and they're going to be little ambassadors. Even if they're not happy with everything that they've learned, they know it now and they can share it with other people. It's been a very thorough process. The modified educational plan, it's for all those reasons that Shannon mentioned. But the other piece of it, and I just got to speak to it, is that our contract with our certificated employees requires that we adopt a modified education plan if we think we're going to reduce the number of FTEs that we employ. And it's the first critical date where people are going to feel what's going to be different. And so a lot of work has gone into this to help us understand what kind of an impact that would be. And as Shannon said, that the recommendation currently is up to 8 FTE. I seriously doubt that we will actually reduce our staff by that much, but we have one opportunity when we can say how many people we want to do this, to reduce our staff, and that's these dates on May 1st and May 15th. Once that's done, we don't get to go back and look at that again. I take this very seriously. I don't like messing with people's lives. I don't like people having to worry if they have a job next year or not. But it's the system that we've inherited, and that's the way it's going to be. I wanted to compliment Shannon, because one of the steps in adopting that plan, and she hasn't talked much about it, but I've been able to see it twice now, and I'm so impressed. The way that you make your decisions about what staff on the certificated level that you're going to reduce is by evaluating what their qualifications are, who's certified to do what kind of things, who can teach special ed, who can teach voc ed, who can do what all. You have to have licensing to be able to do all that. And there's this huge database that's been created now with every staff member, every certificated staff member, everybody's experience, everybody's certification, how many years they've been in the district. And the administrative staff is going to be looking at that and saying, okay, we need to fill this, and this position. Who's the most qualified? Who's the most senior? And that's how they make those kind of decisions. It's not taken lightly. And I don't think I've seen a better system than what you've had to work through that, to make sure that you're looking at all the factors that are important. None of that makes it any easier. I just want to comment again that this is and will continue to be a very thorough process. I don't like that we have to make this modified education plan, but it's what our contract and the law requires if we're going to reduce any staff. Our classified staff, we have a different way to do that, and it doesn't have these trigger dates like we have. So anyway, my purpose in saying this is that I think we've had a very thorough process. It's hugely improved in the time that I've been on the board, and it's not fun to be where we are right now, but I think that we're doing it as thoroughly as we possibly can. Really, that's why I moved in it.
Any other debate? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And that's the end of our meeting. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.